All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our extended disc mini webinar, our 15-minute webinar, and on one of, I would say, one of our most popular topics, which is on the disc styles. And today we're going to specifically focus on D styles. We're going to talk about overview of D styles and how to identify D styles. My name is Christina Bowser, and I am the training director here at Extended Disc. And joining me today is my wonderful colleague, Amy Lipinski, senior trainer at Extended Disc. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Christina.
As always, for those of you that are familiar and for those of you that are not, welcome. We do record the webinar in case you miss it or you want to review it or share it with a colleague. We'll post it on our YouTube channel as well as our extendeddisc.org channel. We love your questions, but because it is a very brief webinar, we encourage you to put them in our Q&A section, and if we have time, we will answer them live during the session. Otherwise, we promise to get back to you after the session is over. So let's get started. Let's start with kind of taking a step back and looking at the disc model itself, where D style actually comes from. So Amy, you want to take this?
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like this is a little bit of that public service announcement that I always do before any disc session, right? Because people automatically always think, where should I be? What's the best style? And it's really important to have it be your key points. There is no good or bad. The great thing about DISC is that it's a non-judgmental tool. So it is not judging you by the D, I, S, or C styles. They are all simply different, right? They all have their strengths. They all have their areas to develop. And what's interesting too and important to remember is that we have all four styles within us. We have each one of them. The tool is measuring what's natural versus what's not natural.
Part of, I think, also is that we're going to talk about, specifically the four main disc styles. And today we're focusing in on D style. But as Amy said, you have all four styles. Just some styles are natural to you and some simply take more energy and effort. But even to add on to that is the majority of us are a combination of styles. Most of us are not, or I would say, in fact, extremely rare that any of us are 100% of a disc style naturally. But we focus on, in this case, specifically what is it to present as 100% D, so that we understand the differences and the strengths and the development areas of this particular style. We talked about blinders as well, kind of how we perceive the world. What do we usually, oh, mosquito, sorry. What do we usually say, would you say, about our kind of, we have these lenses that we see the world with?
Yeah, it's important as we talk about the styles to remember that it's almost like glasses, right? That lens that's designed specifically for you is how we approach what we hear in the description of the styles. And so the styles are neutral, right? They're non-judgmental. There's no good or bad with them. And it's our own lens in which we see the world, our own styles, our own experiences that are really adding value to the descriptions that we give to our styles.
Exactly. So let's take a look at kind of how does D styles relate to the four disc styles. And you can see here, this is the extended disc diamond, which is our model of the disc model. The four quadrants, D, I, S, and C. I'm sure you guys are very familiar with it. And on this model, the quadrants are divided by these two axes. You have the axis that divides the left side from the right side, which is your reserved styles, C and S, from your more active styles, which are D and I, specifically D today. We also divide the model in half from the top half to the bottom half, where the top half of the model are what we call your task-oriented styles. And then your bottom half, the I's and S's, are what we call your people-oriented styles. Now, that's not to say you can see that D styles are task oriented as well as on the active side. It's not to say that your D styles cannot focus on people and that they can only focus on tasks. But when we talk about what are our natural preferences, the D style naturally prefers to focus on tasks. They tend to go to tasks first, but that doesn't mean they don't have the ability to focus on people as well. So it's not about ability, it's just about natural preference. The other thing, when we think about what does it mean to be on the active half of the diamond, D styles are, they tend to, we all have energy, right? Except for D styles and I styles, when we have active energy, the energy tends to sit above the surface. We see it. We tend to see D styles, we see their, you know, their emotion, their confidence, that direct eye contact. We can almost feel the energy on the surface. They tend to want to go at a much quicker pace. They are very future focused. They thrive when they're given challenges and change. And that's what we mean by being on the active side. So simply put, if I had to kind of summarize a D style on this quad, on where they sit in this model, they are your independent, accomplishment focused style. They want to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. They're not as focused on how to, you know, what are the steps getting to point B, but how do I get to B so I can go to C to D to E. Anything you would add, Amy?
No, I think that was great. And I think it gives some insights onto some of our next little slides here too. So this is the overview of our D style. And these headers, I think, are just so important because remember, our goal is really to learn about these styles so we know how to interact with them, because I'm sure we all work or interact at some point with a D style, right? So these headers give us some insights on how to recognize and what the Ds are all about, right? So when we see a D, like Christina said, they're independent. They're about getting things done. We describe them as being large and in charge, right? They like to be in control. And so they want to take control of situations. They walk into a room and it's like, all right, let's start the meeting. I am here, right? Because they're taking control. And we always say that we become more of who we are when we are under pressure. We go more to our natural style because it doesn't take energy, right? It's something that's easy for us. So under pressure, my Ds tend to go more toward that task. And to the other styles, they almost appear like they're insensitive. They have that lack of concern for others because, again, their natural tendency is to go to task versus those people. And when we think about what does a D fear, right? Do they fear anything? Because they seem to be so confident about everything. And the one thing they do fear is that loss of control because they want to be large and in charge. So they're oftentimes thinking that, you know what, I need to have control. I'm afraid if I lose it, right? Give me a choice so I have some sense of control in the situation. And they are active. So they are actively wanting to change, do things, right? It's get it done now while we're talking. I'm going to get that signed and off and move on to the next thing because they are a fast-paced style.
So how do we identify D styles, right? We already established that they're active, they're task focused. So you guys priority visualize, priority thinking, I know some D styles. So these individuals tend to seek results. You know, they want to, not only do they want the results, they want them today, now. So they can appear impatient because they work at a kind of very brisk pace. They act quickly and decisively. So sometimes we think, wow, you know, obviously D styles make the best leaders, right? Because they're very decisive. And as Amy said, they're large and in charge. But remember, DISC is about preferences. D styles prefer to make decisions. D styles want to be in charge. But what DISC doesn't tell us is it doesn't tell us whether they have the attitude or the skills or the experience or the knowledge to be in charge. So As powerful as DISC is, focusing on behaviors, because that's what we can make adjustments to, it does not give you the complete picture of that individual. They like to control the interaction. So they want to speak, and so thereby they tend to be impatient listeners. They're very direct, which is oftentimes very refreshing for us, but sometimes it could be a little bit kind of brusque and, kind of demanding. They tend not to filter. We mentioned they're very independent. They want to be in control, and they don't like to spend a lot of time on non-essentials. They are the ones that give them the executive summary. Just tell me what's the bottom line. Tell me what I need to know. So they're not really there for the chit chat so much. So identifying D styles, you probably have a good visual picture. You might even know someone. So think about these kind of descriptors when you're trying to identify, particularly in this case, D styles.
And their communication style, like Christina said, they're on the active side. So you're going to actually probably see and hear and feel their communication style, right? Because it's on that active side. We're going to see it. It's above the surface. And so they're direct. I always joke, they're familiar with the phrase insert foot in mouth, right? Because they don't really think before they speak or say something. And sometimes it just comes flying out. I have D-style friends who say, oh, did I just say that out loud? I meant to keep that to myself, right? That wasn't supposed to come out of my mouth, but they forget because they just say it so fast. And they're the ones that you're going to hear using pronouns like I and me, because they tend to be a little more self-centered, right? No right or wrong, good or bad about it. It's just kind of how they are. It's all about me and how is this going to benefit me and what's in this for me, right? And this is what I need. All about results, all about big picture when they're talking. So like Christina said, give them that executive summary, right? They're not going to go into the nitty-gritty details with you. They're going to give you that big picture. And they're not my best listeners in my style groups, right? Because like Christina mentioned, they want to get from A to B as quickly as possible so they can move on to C and get all of these results done. So they just don't always have that patience to listen, or also that patience to hear everything you might have to say. They're chomping at that bit to get in. And so they might tend to interrupt you as well. They have command and presence about them. They have confidence that just oozes from them. So much so that when they speak, sometimes those opinions come across as their facts. And they have that ability to communicate their opinions as though they are facts.
Yeah, they believe it, so it gets us to believe it as well.
Right.
I think the other thing about D styles that I admire so much is that I myself, I'm going to put it out there, I'm a people-oriented style. So I tend to get emotional. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. And I absolutely love when my D-style colleague or my D-style friend says, let me handle that. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. They are much more comfortable making those kind of what we consider maybe cold or difficult decisions. They're great leaders when we are in kind of change and chaos. They thrive on it. They tend to think outside the box. So, big risk, big reward. We all benefit from that. So remember, every leader is not going to be a D style, and not every D style wants to be a leader. We all have strengths that we bring to the table, and we all have areas that we need to develop on ourselves. Ds want to be in charge, but sometimes they may need to work on their interpersonal skills to get people to follow them, to slow down and listen, to kind of roll up their sleeves and get the work done, to not make mistakes. So hopefully today we gave you a little bit of an overview of D styles. Anything you would add, Amy?
I love what you were talking about at the end, Christina, just that idea of, I think human nature, we so often look at, oh, they're different from me, right? Like, this is what bothers me about these styles because they're different. And being able to appreciate the benefits, because all of the styles have strengths. They all have areas they can improve. So really focus in on the benefits that those D styles bring to your team and to your life.
All right, so thank you guys for joining us today. Hopefully that will help you deliver D style to your clients. And in continuation of this series, we do have another webinar focusing on the next style we're gonna, which is the I styles, and that will be next Wednesday, same time. We also have a sales webinar on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on the excuse index. So you can go to www.extendeddisc.org and click on the events tab, and you can see all the webinars we have coming up. So thank you, Amy. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and have a great, safe, happy rest of the day.
Thanks, Christina. Bye, everyone.